Hey, welcome to the Unmasked Podcast. This is Ashleigh Chevalier, and I am back with the one and only Johnny Terrell, owner and all the wonderful magic maker at Soul Haven Studios in Virginia Beach. How are you?
Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm so glad to see you. We had a couple of scheduling glitches because I moved and got married, and I was like, we had a date to record, and I was like, I didn't even remember we talked about it. I was so.
No, it's fine. Well, it was the thing. I was like, oh, I should probably set up. I was like, hey, we're doing this, right? And you're like, oh no. I was like, no, it's fine.
Oh, I felt so bad, but you're always super busy anyway. Yeah. So a couple of things. Well, you're in your regular studio space. I am in my husband's office at his church, and he has got all of these little bobbleheads on the top level, and I'm not going to show them all because I feel like that's spoilage, but the Mandalorian is my favorite.
Sure.
And then he's awesome. Eating the frog. Come on. Yeah. Doesn't that just make you happy?
It's so good.
I feel like all I want to do is be like, boop, boop, boop.
Yeah, absolutely. Why wouldn't you? Yeah.
Can't do stuff this funny. Come on.
No. Where's Ellie when you need her? This seems like an Ellie job.
Actually, she does do funny stuff like that. It's really fun. It looks like he's got the whole Mando crew up here, and watch me knock them all down.
Sure.
I would. This thing I would do. I'd beat it, and then they'd all domino effect. I'm like, I should stop touching these. Anyway, okay. So today we're going to talk about something you've been working pretty closely on, which I think is really neat. It's a hot topic. AI, artificial intelligence, but how it's affecting the music industry is not actually being well discussed on social media. I'm sure there are a lot of reasons for that. Sure. But you are a little closer to it than most of us are. We're affected. Sure. So why don't you give us the broad view of what you're working on, and then we can talk a little bit about the ethics and applications.
Sure, absolutely. So just like any new technology, it's always everyone's in either panic or complete denial that it's a thing. I have been using just from a business running a business standpoint, AI for a little bit. Just it could do as a tool. It's incredible. So I'm a member of the Recording Academy.
Explain what that is.
So the Grammys, it's the people, but I mean they do a ton of they do a bunch of there's Grammy U's that deals with students, music education, but then there's different wings of it. There's the I'm the producer engineer wing. There's a songwriter and artist wing, and then there's a music business publisher wing. So it's they do a ton of things. It's if you have enough credits to join, it's definitely worth it to do networking events and stuff like that. There's always tons of great things, and then there also it's what's driving any type of new policy. If you're looking to take things to a professional, I mean, there's so many guidelines, and one of the tough things with how chaotic the music business is, there's no dedicated union to keep things in line like there are for actors, voice actors, people who design video games. There's things in place of here's the typical rates, here's how things need to be paid, here's hours available to work,
standards, industry standards totally. That are agreed upon. Yeah,
and although there's not a heavy union setup, but Nashville still uses those union guidelines where if you're booking a full day, you're working in 3-hour chunks, hour break, another 3 hours, which doesn't exist anywhere else. It's a little chaotic.
Well, okay, before I go into that, let's pin this and say songwriters who have their licensing through BMI, ASCAP, or CSAC rarely see any of the money while they're out scraping and charging small businesses to fund their admin. And I'm not trying to knock them. I don't know enough about it, but I do know small businesses who are why are you hounding me for when artists don't even see the money,
Sure. Well, and then a lot of it is also how artists get paid is such a different thing. Where I'm if I'm working with people who are my sole goal is to be a songwriter, no, don't want to gig, don't want to do this. I'm cool, understand what sync licensing in and get into that business because there's way more money in that than there is anything else. Because people aren't. It's very rare when people are buying physical copies of records. Which if you're an artist putting stuff out, that's where you get the most amount of money. Well, that and if you end up getting merchandising and then satellite radio, so Sirius XM, that's that could be a huge payout. It's massively different.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. I had somebody was they were talking about Spotify. I think you have to get 1.5 million streams on Spotify to get this and you'd get the same amount of money if you only had your song played 100 times on Sirius XM, which is like, but again, you're dealing with in the series that you're dealing with advertisers and like have your subscribers. And so it's like, okay, the business model that kind of makes sense. Streaming platforms don't make any sense at all. But that I was like, okay, I get why that's a higher royalty than like Spotify.
Well, all of this is really setting up our AI conversation pretty well, because what you're highlighting is where musicians make money the most, and that is in syncing and merchandising, whether that's through like publication. Like, I consider like syncing a song merchandising your product, right? You're merchandising your song. And then if you're selling t-shirts or hard products, like you said, vinyls and CDs aren't selling as much. You have to have a certain level of nostalgia. And actually the cost for return on those is not as high, right? Like your percentage return on selling a vinyl that cost you $20 to make, if you only got a certain amount, printed, and CDs are getting thrown away. So it's kind of like DVDs, but I guess, so we talked about that. And then now let's talk about the applications of AI, which I didn't know the Recording Academy was involved in that conversation. Are they involved on a national or international level?
Well, the Recording Academy is strictly American. Like there's
that doesn't mean they're not weighing in on larger conversations. So for you as a songwriter, you like for your songs to get royalties overseas, you have to register your song with a whole different system. But with the Recording Academy, no. But I mean, they've been going back and forth to DC, helping write. I can't remember the name of the bill, but that's going to be put in front of Congress, if they're actually going to do anything in Congress, but to combat this, and it's like it is a very thought out like way of doing things that keep things regulated, and like keeping things as like, this is a tool, and the royalties and anything that's like pushed through has to be something that was created by an American or a worker, a person. It has to be traced back to that. Well, I think for artists, this is a little bit of hope when it comes to the Grammys, because a lot of independent artists feel like it's a long shot, and it is, and that the Grammys are just fluff now. Like the general consensus, if you're a working musician, is that it's a prestigious thing, but they're not really doing anything for artists. But it sounds like they are, and that's just not something that we're aware of.
So the Grammy Awards is just like one thing, but like the Recording Academy itself is they do a ton. And like again, look into like, if again, I forgot what the criteria for an artist, the accreditation, but it is absolutely worth it to look into, because they do all of these things, and panels with publishers, panels with all this stuff that, like, again, you don't have to be Beyonce level artist to have it benefit you if you're working in the industry. And I think this is different than this is recorded music industry, like that's the Recording Academy. So it is different than like putting on a show production or touring. That's a whole other deal. But it's definitely they do a lot, and even as I'm getting deeper into it, I'm like, I cannot believe all of the things that are available. That if you're not in New York, LA, Nashville, like you don't see it regularly. But I mean, it's all of these people are there to help for sure.
Okay, well, all right. So we're going to talk a little bit about what they're doing with AI and the limitations and how people are using AI in music ethically and unethically.
Sure.
But before we get into that, let's talk about some of the deals that musicians are cutting, which I just saw a couple of famous artists speak about this, about their deals with Live Nation and what some of the touring deals are. Like, I know Jelly Roll said that there are musicians on Music Row who are 95.5 deals. And what he said was, and you can find it, and I could probably find it again, and maybe I'll put the link down in the bottom of this podcast, is that musicians are going on tour, and they're getting advanced a certain amount of money, and then they're making only 5% of the revenue, and then they're paying back on that advance. So they're paying back on interest while already giving 95% of the revenue from touring to these different management or whatever organizations. Live Nation, specifically, this artist came out and said, he would go in, they would sell out arenas, and they were not seeing any of the money that came from, like, they were still on a bad deal, right? A bad touring deal where they're making this much money to pay back on an advance, and the company's still taking 95% of whatever they made. He's like, they're charging $20 for a beer. The band doesn't see any of that, and they're basically working themselves to death to pay off a loan while people are lining their pockets off of their talent and entertainment. And I think that I think it's highly unfortunate, but I also think that this is something to consider when we're looking at the entertainment industry, what we're supporting, and it's also something to consider because that kind of deal that also affected like the 50s to 70s artists who were on bad 360 like deals. We know about all those like label deals. Quickly, if you haven't heard about that, it's a very similar product where like artists were just going broke on the road, owing the label, and they were paid not in cash, maybe in drugs, maybe in something else. We might reference like with Cadillac Records out like movie. This is a important scene where Howlin' Wolf like looked at Muddy Waters and was like, I pay cash for this. You know, they're going to pay me cash. You're getting a Cadillac, but you don't have cash in the bank. Kind of conversation, and that is still happening. And I think that the conversations that are happening with AI right now are considering this kind of thing, because if we don't do this, this is only going to make it so much worse.
Sure. Well, I mean, but as far as like those deals go, I mean, like if you're a musician and don't have a good lawyer with you to go over these deals, yeah, you're going to get screwed. But that's like with any deal ever. And so you have to absolutely do that. I know plenty of people who are touring who like get to that Live Nation level and then back off and keep at mid-level theaters because they're making crazy money at that in comparison. But yeah, like if you're gonna be buying into the Live Nation system, which there's another possibly like tearing apart that monopoly, but we'll see how that plays out in another 5-6 years. But yeah, but as far as AI goes, it's the regulation of it, and again, it's such a new thing. It's hard to know like what to regulate, and then how it keeps developing and evolving because it moves so fast, and you have a government and then lawyers and businesses at that large level that take a long time to adjust to any of it.
Well, I mean, in processing anything and getting it through Congress will take forever.
Sure.
And the working class is what suffers. But anyway, let's talk about first, like,
yeah.
You mentioned 3 areas of AI where music is being used as a, talk about those areas.
Sure. So one as a tool, one as an assistant, and then one to actually create things. So again, it's just like anything. Like when Pro Tools and digital audio workstations came out, you didn't have to have a giant tape machine and take 4 hours to splice a drum take. You could just instantly cut and do it. Mm-hmm. Same thing with AI. Like how like I use it is if I have a sound source or something where like, okay, there's a lot wrong here. I can have AI analyze it and it will say like, here are the problem areas, whatever, and then I can address those things. I can also have, say if I have an EQ for a vocal, or I could have these 2 things set up on like a guitar and vocal, and they're fighting each other. I can have those 2 things, the AI built in between those 2 things, to talk to each other, and then they will make the adjustments to then make the room to make it clear. Now, I could take 35 minutes to do that, or if I have these tools I trust, and sometimes it's hit or miss still all new technology. You know, I can have it there and it instantly do it, and then I can continue my workflow to make sure I get the best sonically thing happening. Or I can just scrap it and go my own route. And then the scarier part of this is when people are using it for actually creative content. So if you have somebody who like, because again, if you have, I mean, everyone has GarageBand on their phone. It's fun to, even if you're not a musician, it's fun to like, let's throw in some loops and mess around. It's a game essentially. Like it's absolutely fine to do. The problem is now you can say like, okay, I would like to have a Drake style vocal do a song about cruising on a yacht, and in 20 minutes AI will pump out a song lyrically doing that because AI has analyzed Drake's entire catalog, and now you as the creator of that can release it, and then like that's your song that you could then connect royalties on, even though it says like Drake style or whatever. Where these laws are now coming into place of if distributors are paying this, if advertisers are paying for it, everything needs to be traced back to an individual, and so there's a lot of pull now with crediting, and even where this affects independent artists is they're going to have to when they go through these recordings, have everything documented of who played on what, when it was recorded, all of that. So if that comes up of like, hey, this something doesn't check out in this sounds AI generated, they can then go back and like, nope, this was traced to a person. We all know this exists. The Recording Academy and the Grammys have been on the forefront of this and there was a song that 2 years ago won a Grammy. And then once AI, when like they were like, oh, it was real, AI did all the production, they took the Grammy back. So like they weren't having that at all. Cause again, they're like, no, we are celebrating again,
authentic creation.
Authentic creation. Mm-hmm. You know, you can call the elitism or whatever, but it still has to be traced back to a person.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So that's a lot what's going on with AI, and if you look at the struggles that actors had with their SAG agreements with the major studios.
What's a SAG agreement?
Oh, the Screen Actors Guild. So like what if you're on film, you're a part of a guild, which is essentially what the Recording Academy is kind of is. Mm-hmm. And then when these major studios were like, well, we can use AI generated version of Helen Mirren, and then they were like, no, you can't do that. And like Netflix got behind it, Amazon got behind it. The people who were distributing movies were like, no, if you're going to use AI generated actors and AI, like, okay, the script was written by AI, we're not putting it out. Like everything has to be traced down. And so now that's essentially what the Recording Academy has been doing is, all right, let's take the same model they did, which is an unbelievably working system, and now applying it to music and just making sure that if there is money to be captured, if there's product to be released, that it is at least going back to the people who made it.
Well, I really appreciate that incentive. It's something we've talked about before, that people really engage in art for the human element. Sure. Like even the tech created side of art where people might, they still want the human perspective of it. And I found that there is a certain amount of like human rejection of, at least within myself and some of the people I've talked to, but I don't want to interact with robots all the time. And I don't genuinely appreciate, like, we're made to love the world around us as living beings. And I love hand created things, even if it's the same reason you might hate kitschy things from the department store. Right. So, but I really love the ethics about it but where it might get a little dicey is in where the concepts were born. Right. So if you're talking about AI copying someone else's likeness without permission, I mean, that's a no-brainer. Sure. Unless they're given permission to do that. We'll talk about some examples that you've given where that has been allowed. Sure. And then but what it has done is shorten the drawing board a little bit. Like if you're not excellent at harmonies, you could like jump that learning curve really quickly. Yeah. And you can test things really quickly, which is also how it's being used in the business setting. Yeah. So it becomes, it could also like heighten people's perception of your raw musical talent. Sure. So actually, like I have done some work for someone who is a leader in the AI industry. He's spoken at MIT, just recently spoke at the United Nations, Mike Koenigs. He runs a great program called AI Accelerator for Entrepreneurs. He's really been at the forefront of all of this. And he actually used AI to generate a song to speak to a group of 7,000 teenagers in the likeness of an artist. Now he's not making money off of all of this. The entire point of it, and it didn't sound like the artist. He was ethical about it. The entire point of it was to demonstrate to this young group the power of AI. Sure. And he talks about ethics. So people are already using this, is my point. But something else he talked about is, I used it on Google Translate as the power of AI to auto translate songs.
Totally.
That is like really leveling the playing field. I used Google Translate to translate the song I recorded, Understand Me, into Spanish because I studied Spanish, and the guy who I recorded it with from Shadu is Panamanian, and he then helped me finesse it because AI didn't get it perfectly right. Sure. Right? He's like, this is categorically like it would work, but people are going to laugh at how you said it because right? So
Yeah.
he helped me tweak the lyrics so that they were palatable to the vernacular, if that makes sense.
Well,
And I think that's where it broadened my ability to connect.
sure.
And then I ethically, I mean, that's not illegal to do. That's just translation, right?
No, totally. Well, and also like AI takes like millions and millions of case studies to do work, so it's not always accurate. Like we were doing some measurements of our room to tune the speakers, and like my engineer partner Zion, he's the most tech head person of all time, but he was using like AI to do, and it was doing some awesome stuff, but we were listening back, I was like, this sounds terrible, because AI has never been a person in a room that's listened to things, and so we had to tweak a bunch of, and it had the basic concepts because it reads through manuals, but it doesn't have any life experience of like actually designing rooms or anything like that.
Okay.
So but I think again that's where AI is a great tool, but it still does not beat experience and like human intuition.
Well, but I think the line where a person coming back and recording the line doesn't mean AI didn't write it. So it still could get a little like hesitant or dicey there. Like people, create entire symphonies on AI. Actually, MIDI was not far from, like, let's think about this. This isn't exactly new. People have been using technology to write music for a long time.
Sure. Well, MIDI, you still have to have a person inputting that.
Yeah, but it would do like some auto harmonies and stuff. I'm just kind of like taking it to the oldest form of technology into like what we've got with Pro Tools now.
But that's still like a generated chip. Where AI is, it's then creating something from scratch. Like if even with the where the AI creating the harmony or the notes, yes, that's existed. Where it's getting odd is like I could make, if it's like, I think we were talking about this before, but like, say if we're like, oh, you know what, you're laying down your lead vocal and then you're laying down a harmony. Oh, what would this sound like if a guy was singing this harmony? And then that's the kind of crazy thing is like, now we can have a guy character. So like, okay, what's a Jelly Roll, more like his version of this harmony, and it'd be that. And it still might suck. And a lot of AI, when you listen to a lot of AI generated things, it's terrible because it's never new and inventive or creative. It's just like, okay, my computer says this could be it, which again might give you a great starting off point. I'm not an awesome vocal producer as far as like, oh, this is easily the 3-part harmony needs to be, but if you can get me in a ballpark and then I can tweak from there, great, awesome. And then we'll get real people to come in and crush it.
Well, and I think though that monetizing on it, there are likely to be people who generate entire things for placements from AI and just have humans record it. And then they tracing it back and they're through the loophole and then they're monetizing on it. And this is where people are using this in AI everywhere. Like they're using it in every business and every industry. So how, like, I know proving the creation of the song is going to be very difficult. They'd have to do serious IP tracking and invasive things.
Which they do. And again, like a lot of the new documentation coming out of when you're releasing records for these bigger things, like, I'll send you like the thing that like I have to like help people fill out now. It is like super drastic and keeps it, but it's also the metadata that keeps everything in line.
It's true.
And again, keeps it tracked. And then if it ends up being like, oh, this was used in AI, and let's say like Warner Brothers used your song, you're like the AI song for a movie, and like there was like 4 or 5 people across the line that helped push it through, they're going to look at, all right, who knew this was AI, and find the last person involved, and like, all right, now you're responsible for damages, which has happened recently of this like AI I can't remember what it was, but it was like somebody created something for AI that was then sold to a publisher. I think it was a book or something like that, but it got sold to a bunch of things, and then they had to pull it because for like whatever the regulations were on that, and then that person who went into ChatGPT, typed in the prompt, ended up being financially responsible for all of it.
Wow, because plagiarism, they really are. A lot of people don't understand that AI is really just a data harvester.
Yep.
And they just condense, and they're pulling from metadata and histories.
Sure.
If different ones have different accesses, they pull from different sources. But if you're trying to write in a certain voice or something like that, by permission of the person. But I think this also, like, as a musician, there are different reasons musicians are in the industry. There are people who, let's just talk about it. This isn't going to be a perfect diagram or explanation, but you've got people who are sharks. They just want to make money, and music is the way that they can do it. Or it's another avenue for how they can productize and make money, right? And that's just, entertainment is full of that, and there's really no ethics in how they want to. And so technology and AI just becomes another avenue for them to do that. And then, which is why, like, aggressive regulation and like early proactivity is important, though I think they all knew it was happening before now. So, but. And you've got artists like me who really don't even, I mean, it's cool that we could test a harmony with AI, but I really don't care, because I'm more interested in creating the thing and connecting with the people. And I'd rather it be a little wrong, right? Than perfectly right. And I know that there's some artists and like some musical efforts that don't really allow for that. And I get that, but that's not my genre, right? That's not what I do. And I'm not anti-AI, but I really am when it comes to earthy art. Like, you'll never they could create a clay human sound all they want. It will never sound like a human vibrato. It will never. Like, to the ear, you might think that there's so much more in our brains processing than just what we're hearing. We have like this connectivity pulse that is way deeper than just, I want to connect with the robot, So I don't know. I think the biggest things, the most encouraging thing for me on this is that at least they're requiring humans to be responsible for the ultimate product. I think they'll get swifter and swifter. Like, there's always a crook in the field, but
that's what tech nerds do. Yeah,
I mean, it comes down to that like Frankensteinian argument of you can, but should you?
Sure. Oh
my God. It's like,
that's all. For sure. That's all technology. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that's everything really. If you create it, like, just because you can, should you?
Sure.
It's very philosophical, but
it's a real thing. Yeah.
Anyway, if you were telling musicians like the top 3 tips for using AI with music, what would you tell them?
Treat it as just somebody in the room who's probably pretty dumb. Where, like, don't quite take it's like, okay, Ringo said something, and then if it ends up being a good idea, like, Ringo said something, that was a good thing. But just treat it like you're like an idiot assistant. Like, that is, and that's there's a bigger engineer I work with every once in a while, but that's what he says, and I was like, it's 100% true. It's just because it's usually wrong, because it, again, doesn't have instincts, doesn't know where it needs to go. It's just like, hey, what about this? And it's very excited.
And it's very exciting.
It's very excited, absolutely.
What do you mean? Does it get like?
Yeah. Oh, look what I did. Yeah, again, like, for sure.
Man, I like quiet AIs. I don't want all that. I got enough voices around me. I don't need. For sure.
If you do a lot of digital music production, there's a lot of great AI tools. One of them's called Exo Drums, that if you have like a lot of drum sample libraries and all this stuff, it will scan through and meta tag, and it makes searching, like, if you have like, drums and loops and samples on a ton of different drives, puts it all in one spot and keeps it meta. It is so awesome. Let's see what else. Things like that. And then I would say this for musicians, but anybody, but like using AIs for prompts of scheduling, because musicians, we are notorious of procrastinating or whatever. And you could type into like AI, like, hey, on this week, I have this blocked in my schedule. I need to practice, and I need to co-write, and I need to do like whatever. And then it'll give you a prompt of like, oh, what if from 9 to 10:30 you use it to practice? And then what about this time you use it to, like, it just, again, if you just need that help to kind of creatively get out of your doom scrolling funk, it's a great tool for that.
Okay, so I'll add to that because there are a lot of different apps that automate stuff. So as a marketing entrepreneur, like, my degree's in marketing, I was a dual major for marketing and music. Just so our listeners know, I studied vocal performance at William & Mary in Virginia, and also at George Mason University. And I sang in the operas there, and then I just realized I didn't want to continue down the classical path, but I did well. And I got accepted as soon as I auditioned at George Mason. Anyway, I say that to say, I have like the crossover of the experience, right? So I've always worked more than one job in both careers,
Sure.
right? So I run businesses in both sides, and I use AI, and we have been using AI and automations for years and never known it, like Calendly,
Sure.
and Google. I mean, if you're tech savvy, you knew it. But there was a software called Motion that was used for scheduling,
Yeah.
and I literally don't need that because now I just go into my AI and create a schedule.
Sure.
And that's what you're basically saying.
Yeah.
There is an AI for anything and everything that you do. I would just say before you buy a software, make sure it's not something you can't just use in your open AI.
Absolutely. 100%. Yep.
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 You could use them to write your landing pages, design your landing pages. But again, like I've used, I mean, you name it. I've probably used every landing page software. There's Showit, there's WordPress backend, there's Wix and Squarespace, and but I currently still use Bandzoogle for my website because the templating for my band website, it's just easy and it's cheaper. It's a cheaper like standard platform, and they're consistent. They're also independent musician forward.
Sure. Absolutely.
And so I would use their templates, but you could still use AI to optimize your landing pages.
Yep.
And to enhance them with SEO. And SEO, I do not think, and this is just my prediction, there have been conversations because AI does drive buying cycles, and some leading marketing experts think that people are going to get off of Google and search engines and move into just OpenAI, but I disagree because Google already has OpenAI.
Sure.
So the buys and what they do is actually have a vaster, like these other AIs are pulling from Google and they don't have the decades of historic data to pull from it. Like you'd have to start, and I mean, I'm not an expert here. This is just my conversation. But unless an open AI starts offering local businesses, and this might be $1 million idea here, we'll see, right? Unless an OpenAI starts doing localities that then offer local businesses an opportunity to register with them so that they can, and it wouldn't be hard. And then within that OpenAI search, these businesses would come up. And that's how buy cycles would then start to split, and then you'd have a little more competition. But it doesn't negate the power of SEO, because once you start doing that integrated like metadata conversation, then you still require it. It's just where are you going to go? Where are your customers, and which SEO? Because I don't know if anyone knows how I'm a jack of all trades. I know what SEO does, but and I know how to do it, but I'm not the person who's going to drive millions to your site with SEO. Okay. But the function of how that works with the keywords and the interlinks and to and from is, it's not difficult to replicate. However, then there would have to be a software that analyzed how to best optimize your page for where your customers are. If they were in ChatGPT and there were this is hypothetical. If ChatGPT allowed small businesses to start registering through a certain amount of localities, which would be brilliant, and then they would originate traction and buy cycles and products, they still wouldn't have the massive reach that Google has just by having the listing and the histories. But you would have to start to then have a software that analyze like keywords that interlinked both. Otherwise, you'd have to start having multiple pages for every software so the SEO worked the way you wanted to work. So that's just like, and I'm not tech savvy enough to say yay or nay on this. I'm sure it's something that they've thought about and have decided against. I don't know how they would work around the buy cycles, but I don't think we'll ever get away from the legacy search engines. Even though there are some cases and discussions about Web 3.0 being that, I don't think we're super close to, 8 billion people on the earth and a huge lag of that population and buying population, not even hardly catching up. I mean, the whole world would have to catch up for that to be, what do you think?
This is definitely way bigger than my interest level in all of this. Just because again, for me, ChatGPT and things like that are just meant for like a reactionary tool, and I don't necessarily. I don't even necessarily really use Google to ask questions or look up businesses. So I may not be the best case study here.
Well, but if you look up a product, okay, and you get, like, if I go online and I'm like, oh, radish seeds, I'm going to get 15 different things that populate, and that's Google on the bicycle.
Yes. Oh, okay. I got you. Okay. So I think like where I would, if I was like, hey, give me the history of radish seeds, I would use like ChatGPT for that, just to give me a block of information. If I was then going, where can I find this? That's where I would more use for Google. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying now. So you're saying like implementing that thing, that very thing of like, okay, where is that localization thing happening in the chat? Okay, I'm following. I'm not as smart as Ashleigh. So
no.
Or think about like my brain's not wired like that. But I now fully understood everything. So I agree.
Okay, so here's one more trick of the brain there. Google does have a very accurate AI.
Yes, Gemini's awesome. Yeah.
And yeah, it's
Gemini?
Yeah. And they give pretty thorough answers that are like checked, because I've done some checking on that kind of thing across different things. But the other thing though, and this is a Web3 thing, we won't get into this because it's a whole nother can of worms, but blockchain as a transparent currency. Now, whether you're in a Bitcoin or any of these different types of cryptos that exist on blockchain technology, let me go back a little bit to explain why I know anything about this. When I was leading marketing for Nebula Media, which was a subsidiary of Nebula Space Enterprise, I built websites and did marketing materials and press materials for this like startup tech company. And I just got exposed to it. Again, not an expert at it, but one thing that really hit me hard outside of the transparency and the limitations, and like people have lost millions because they've invested, and then if you lose your passkey, you cannot access the money you made. It's crazy to think about it. Yep. Now we've already got like Apple One, Walmart One, right? You've got Apple Pay and Walmart One. Like you can't use Apple Pay at Walmart. So if you were going to check out, you couldn't. They want you to use their system, their thing. So Apple and Walmart and Amazon have these like different competitions, right, going on. If any one of those decided to adopt one unified currency, where you were shifting, like if you were going to Amazon and they were like, you can use your dollars to buy Amazon dollars or Amazon coins or whatever, and it shifted into crypto or Bitcoin, the entire global economy would change. Almost all of the currencies would be affected. Now, you'd have to talk to a finance person to really get the details, but that would sway the value of the entire global, like, economies and, like, how dollars and yen and all those things, like, I'm not an expert, but it's really something to think about. So that, to think about then how AI, because AI is a player in all of that. And I mean, this conversation goes deeper and deeper. So it's an extension of the music part. But I guess the reason it's important to talk about all of it is because it's way more relevant to us than we think. And
Absolutely.
It could affect like everything that we... And I'm not a fearmonger. Like, I don't think we need to be afraid.
We need to understand. Yeah.
Yes. And potentials don't mean realities. I think that's really important in the world of tech and like what's actually going to happen. And there are organizations like, I'm really glad to hear Recording Academy is doing that. I had no idea. That is great news.
Sure.
And I hope other industries like lead with that. But I'm afraid they won't, because corporate greed often drives the train. And I don't know why, like, we just have to be in support of the Recording Academy for this kind of thing because we don't want to lose it.
Sure.
So anyway, so I love talking about this stuff. But that's, you know, I don't want to be out of my depth either. It might mean I could drop a couple of resources of the things that we've talked about, like what the Recording Academy is doing in the show notes. And also I'll just go ahead and pin what Mike Koenigs has done with AI Accelerator. Because he has a lot of really great tools. It is a pay for course, but he has a lot of really great tools that entrepreneurs are like saving a whole lot of time and doing really well. And then I could drop the other Any other AI tools? Do you have any others you want me to drop in here?
Let's see. There's something from Sonable called Smart EQ that's really cool.
Oh,
I'm trying to think more recording based one. There, Exo Drums is a good AI. It doesn't create things for you, but it does all the metadata tagging of drum samples and stuff.
okay.
And there's another really cool one from Waves Audio that just came out called the Equator. That's really cool for just music production things, just making things sound a little bit better.
And you find these to be ethical tools that just
massively.
help you do what,
Yes, it's essentially it's that idea of like it's just the idiot in the room saying like, oh, what if we do this? And then it's like either like, okay, this is cool, or like, I can't believe you're here, and then delete. But yeah, they're all. But yeah, none of it's like doing the work of like creating a somebody strumming a guitar, writing anything. It's not doing any of that. It's more, again, these are just purely tools that are useful.
Everyone, I hope this episode was super insightful for you. Went a little beyond the typical things of what we might normally talk about in music, but AI is definitely affecting you and I, whether we want to admit it or not. We've left a couple of links down in the show notes. Go ahead and give John Terrell a follow at Soul Haven Studios on Instagram and Facebook. Can we find you on YouTube?
Yeah, there's the Soul Haven Studios on YouTube.
Yep, and what is the website for your amazing studio?
soulhavenstudios.com.
There you go. All right, and if you want to find me, you can find me at ashleighchevaliermusic.com, levelupcollab.com, and I'm all over the social medias. Primarily operate on the Instagrams at Ashleigh Chevalier. Surprise! Go ahead and give this show Unmasked a like or follow or subscription or whatever your different podcast platform has, and we will see you next time.